So the Supreme Court sided with the Biden administration to target gun owners because this is America on the brink. And folks, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you like me and you like what we do here. And if you don't like me and you don't like what we do here, you can still subscribe, because what better way to spend your day than hating on me? I love it. And you can even subscribe to be a Daily Caller Patriot. There's a lot more to hate on or love on, so your choice, it's there for you. All right, so Missouri passed a law back in 2021 that would fine police officers or possibly even sue them if they tried to enforce federal gun laws. Now, a lower court blocked the law, meaning that while litigation continues, the law can't be enforced. Now, the state requested that the Supreme Court issue a stay, but they said no. Except for good old Clarence Thomas. Now, federal laws require, for instance, that licensed gun manufacturers have to engrave serial numbers on firearms, right? They have to keep a sales records. All of this is also known as tracking, right? Make sure the government can keep an eye on who's buying guns and who has guns. It's so safe, right? Other laws also bar felons or drug addicts from possessing a firearm, which, just side note here, this is the argument that Hunter Biden's attorneys are actually using now, right? That the federal law that prohibits a drug addict from possessing a weapon is unconstitutional. And yes, the Supreme Court will be hearing a general Second Amendment case that will answer Hunter's question. So that'll be something definitely to keep an eye out. We'll talk about it here, folks, of course. But the overall point here is that there is one side that wants to protect the Second Amendment rights of its citizens, and then there is the other side that is getting mad that the government is being questioned for trying to infringe on your right. And we know this to be true because take, for instance, the New York Times coverage of this, okay? They said that the law had, quote, several unusual provisions like, according to the New York Times, the very weird provision that allows a citizen to sue local police agencies for $50,000 for every time they can prove that their Second Amendment right has been violated. Very unusual and scary, right? The type of cultural norm surrounding gun culture has led to this type of thinking, right? That it is unusual that a citizen can sue police for infringing on their right. Why is that unusual? And so you have Missouri, which is a fairly red state, struggling to protect the Second Amendment rights of their citizens. But then you go to California, of all places, and you have a judge saying that the state's ban on so-called assault weapons is actually unconstitutional. So a judge ruled that so-called assault weapons are dangerous but useful. And I think the most important part of this ruling, which is from Judge Roger Benitez, is that he writes that the ban, which banned high-capacity semi-automatic rifles like AR-15s, creates an, quote, extreme policy that a handful of criminals can dictate and infringe on the freedom of law-abiding citizens. California's answer to the criminal misuse of a few is to disarm its many good residents. That knee-jerk reaction is unconstitutionally untenable, just as it was 250 years ago. Now, unfortunately, the law will remain in effect while an appeal is made by the state's attorney general. And I haven't done this for a few episodes, and I've been meaning to, so folks, feel free to hold me to account here. But I want to invoke Thomas Jefferson because he said something that really fits here. So Jefferson wrote in a letter to William Johnson in 1823, "On every occasion of constitutional interpretation, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying to force what meaning may be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, instead let us conform to the probable one in which it was passed." And this is something that I have spoken about in previous episodes as well. If there's ever a matter of debate on a constitutional right, judges, attorney generals, everyone should always err on the side that is closest to freedom, right? The Constitution, it's not some, suggestion list, right? It is a governing doctrine that has been twisted and ignored and gotten us to the point where we are today. We have become a culture that is almost offended by guns, okay? It is taboo in some blue states to tell people that you're a gun owner, right? It's shunned upon. I'm shunned in New York when I tell some people. And we have made legal gun owners outcasts. And it's just such a stark contrast to when this nation was founded because, there used to be this thing. It was called the citizen soldier ethos. And basically the idea there was that there was never a need at first for a standing army when the United States was created because Americans really felt like they had a stake in their country, right? They had something that they were willing to protect and defend because it was so special. And therefore, they would willingly take up arms, right? They didn't need to be coerced by the government or forced by the government. And George Washington once said, "When we assumed the soldier, we did not lay aside the citizen. citizens were prepared to take up arms at any given moment to defend their liberties. And yeah, look, some soldiers, they were offered bounties or land to attract their services. But the risk of, disease, dismemberment, disablement, death, right? That greatly outweighed the rewards. But they nonetheless were willing to do it. And this type of ethos of being proud to be an American and defending what it means to be American has just evaporated, right? The government has expanded exponentially, and yet Americans' desire to retain their rights against said government has just continually shrunk. Americans no longer feel like they have a stake in their country to defend, right? We have become numb at this point and too trusting of our government. We think that we're free, but we are so far from it, okay? Because every year it is slowly chipped away at our core freedoms, right? Think of California. They got away with a ban on a certain type of firearm for more than 30 years. All because they instilled fear into the right people, right? The New York Times calls Missouri's law that lets people sue police for violating their constitutional right unusual. That's how they try to convince you that if you're a legal gun owner, that's unusual, right? Or you deserve to have restrictions. When I say that, this is the brink, we're on the brink, I mean it. We are on the brink of losing everything that we were founded to preserve, protect, and provide and offer to future generations. So it's such an important thing that we remind ourselves every day. The Second Amendment is not something that can be twisted. Anytime there is an infringement upon it, it is up to us to elect people who will hold others to account. It's up to us to call for people to step down if they're not doing it. These are important things because if we lose it in our generation, no generation will get that back. And there will never be another, revolution type event that would guarantee people anywhere in the world the right to bear arms the way we have it. Okay, we have it so lucky and we take it for granted. Folks, more tomorrow on The Brink.